couple people have asked me how I sharpen my knives, and today I'm going to explain how I do it. I sharpen all my knives on this belt sander. If the knife has no edge whatsoever, I start out with a 240 grit sanding belt, and I skip to 400, then 800, then 1000 grit, and then I polish the edge off with this buffing belt.
When people get into knife throwing, the first mistake they make is the knives they buy. So I'm going to tell you what to avoid when picking your throwing knives. Don't buy zombie, apocalypse, or any gimmick knives. Those are junk. If they come with a dartboard, don't buy those either. Don't get light, thin, or small knives. Those are dangerous to the user because they are more likely to bounce back at you and they are harder to control. If you have any questions about knife throwing, ask them in the comments. I made a video on what throwing knives to avoid. Now I'm going to tell you what to look for in a good throwing knife. I can't give you a specific throwing knife to use because there are many different styles and techniques, and different knives work better for different techniques. But I can give a general idea of what to look for. 1. You want a knife with a good weight to it because light knives are harder to control and they are more likely to bounce back at you when you miss. 2. For length, the shortest I would go is 8 inches and the longest I would go is 14 inches. The length of the knife you use will depend on the style and technique you're using. For example, with the style and techniques I throw, I use knives between 9 and 12 inches. I hope this helps. If you have any questions about knife throwing, ask them in the comments.
Knife, tomahawk, and axe throwing has gotten a lot more popular since I started throwing. But I've noticed tomahawk and axe throwing is more popular than knife throwing. They are more popular because they are easier to throw. Here is why axes and tomahawks are easier to throw than knives. Tomahawks and axes are easier to throw because they have more sharp edges and points to stick a target, and knives only have one point to stick the target. Even though axes and tomahawks are easier to throw, I still prefer knives. Here's why. Knives take more skill to throw and stick a target, and knives are more versatile than axes and tomahawks.
Hollywood movies and TV shows would have you believe that the kunai is some great throwing knife, but it is not. In fact, the kunai is a multipurpose utility tool for gardening and masonry work. At certain points in history, kunai were used as improvised weapons, but were not thrown. Kunai throwing knives are marketed towards people who don't know any better. You can throw kunai, you can throw anything with a point, but kunai are not meant to be thrown. The main problem with the kunai in media and the kunai throwing knives you see is that the ring on the handle is too big and the transition from the handle to the ring is too aggressive, which makes it awkward to throw by the handle. It causes you to have to adjust your grip and release. There are some good kunai knives out there, but they are fighting knives, not meant to be thrown.
I've been throwing knives for over a decade now. The most common thing people say is, you can't use this in a real fight, or they ask if it is possible to use knife throwing in a self-defense situation. First, I didn't get into knife throwing for that reason. I got into it because it's fun, and I like doing it. Before I say anything, I'm not telling you to throw a knife in self-defense, and you definitely shouldn't if you have never thrown a knife before. I'm saying this stuff as an experienced knife thrower. I think an experienced instinctive knife thrower could throw a knife in self-defense, but they shouldn't throw their last or only knife. People that carry knives don't carry throwing knives. Most throwing knives don't have live edges on them. People carry knives with sharp edges on them. So if you throw a knife and you hit your target, even if the knife doesn't hit point first, there is still a high chance that you would cut your target. And some knives are heavy enough, if it doesn't cut or stab your target, it will still hurt. I think throwing anything in a self-defense situation could help you. If you throw something hard enough to cause them to take their attention off you, even if their attention is off you for a split second, that is enough time for you to end the situation by hitting them with a follow-up attack or making a getaway.
How a knife is weighted is very important because it determines how the knife is going to fly through the air when you throw it. There are 3 types of knives. They're handle heavy, blade heavy, and center balanced knives. Center balanced knives are knives that the blade and the handle are weighted evenly. To find out how a knife is weighted, you have to find the balance point. If the balance point is closer to the blade, it's a blade heavy knife, and if the balance point is closer to the handle, it's a handle heavy knife. If the balance point is in the center of the knife, it's a center balanced knife. Most traditional rotational knife throwers prefer center balanced knives because the knife rotates evenly no matter if you throw by the handle or the blade. But handle heavy and blade heavy knives are different, and I will explain. For example, if I throw a knife that is handle heavy by the handle, then I throw that same knife by the blade the same way without making any adjustments in my throw. The knife will rotate faster than when I threw it by the handle. The cool thing about instinctive knife throwers is that some throwers prefer differently weighted knives depending on the style and techniques they throw. If you are a knife thrower, let me know in the comments what kind of knives you like to throw.
Almost all knife throwers throw knives with no live edge on them because it's safer and you are less likely to injure yourself. But there is one advantage to throwing a knife with a sharp edge on it. If you throw knives that have a live edge and the knife doesn't hit point first, you still have a chance to cut or stick your target.